Melissa Harris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know you're a busy person, so thank you for taking the time on a Friday morning. So I recently attended the annual AASC gathering. Um, it was in Harbor, Maryland, right? Is it in
Yeah, National
area?
Harbor, Maryland.
National Harbor, Maryland. And we had a booth and everything. And let me just share with you, which I already have like 3 times already, that I was impressed very much by that gathering. And let me tell you why I was impressed. Okay, so I'm a technologist, a business person. I've been to like lots and lots of conferences and expos and so on. And the level of just genuine authenticity of the folks who attended, I've never seen before, right? So the folks I usually mingle with are technologists and marketers and business people, and there's nothing meaningful, to be honest with you, that they're doing really. you know, they're doing SEO marketing, and so when they go to in the morning, they don't have the same kind of meaning that service coordinators have, which is they see the impact of the work immediately. So there's never a question of, is what I'm doing important? Now, of course, they have the question of, am I being compensated accordingly? All right, and we'll talk about that. But I just wanted to make that point that truly, what you're doing is very important. And I attended yesterday. It was your annual gathering, another very impressive, session where everybody was doing. You were talking about important things. Okay, so enough of that. Let's start by asking you the very first question, which was when I was going over your LinkedIn profile, I noticed that you were trained in journalism, right? And you actually did work as a journalist, and then you transitioned to your current position. What's the official title? Director of Government Affairs?
Yeah, I'm the Director of Government Affairs for AASC. Before I joined AASC, I was a news reporter for 15 years,
Wow.
Almost always in politics. So that helped me make this transition to move from someone who writes about policy and analyzes legislation on a daily basis to the work I do now, which is the exact same thing, really, but focused on this narrow topic of service coordination. And so being able to work on a national level for a cause that is so important, as you said, I mean, these people are making a difference every single day, was just really important to me. I mean, as I made the switch from journalism, a career that I really loved, it was important for me to move to a new space in politics where I felt like I fully believed in what I was doing and I felt really passionate about it. And that can be really tough, right? Like there's a lot of issues that are very gray. But for me, when it comes to housing and service coordination, the idea that everybody deserves to be happy, healthy, and housed and age and dignity, that's very black and white. I feel like 100% everyone deserves that. And so it's really easy for me to advocate in this space. And I'm very fortunate to be able to advocate for service coordinators because, as you said, they're just so passionate. They make such a difference. And they're all just such good people.
Yeah, no, I mean, every single one of them, I had a meaningful conversation with them. It's amazing. Amazing, truly amazing, right? And they're very articulate, very smart, they're very curious. So you can see that, their daily work, has gotten the best out of them, right? And so I envy you in the sense that every morning you wake up, you know that whatever you're going to do that day, it's going to move the needle for some people. And then you have like a national level kind of effort that you're doing, right? So I think during that gathering, you guys went to advocate in Congress. Is that right?
Yeah, we took 85 service coordinators to Capitol Hill to meet with their members of Congress. We were specifically educating people about service coordinators. Most congressional offices have never even heard of service coordinators or what they do,
Wow.
even though their positions are funded through the federal budget that Congress approves every year. And so it's really important for them to know what service coordinators are doing every day, understand how they're impacting the residents in their states and in their districts. And so the things that we were asking them for are, increased support for service coordination. You can find that in the Expanding Service Coordinators Act that was just reintroduced in Congress. And then obviously in the annual appropriations bill, we're always looking for Congress to support service coordinators, make sure that they have the funding they need, and hopefully a little bit more funding to kind of bolster those existing service coordinator salaries and resources, and then maybe even get some more service coordinators, because right now only half of senior properties that are eligible for a service coordinator have one.
Really?
The other half don't, just mostly because of funding.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So how do they manage? How do they do their day to day?
That's a good question. It's different across the board. Some companies who are larger maybe have services support at higher levels, but smaller companies where maybe the only person who's working at a site is the manager and the maintenance person, it's really unlikely that residents are having their full needs met, that they're having programs or events or having resources brought to them on site, because the manager and the maintenance person just don't have the capacity for that.
I see.
So right now, those residents are most likely very underserved. So that's why it's so important for us to try to get service coordinators in the rest of these buildings, because, there's no one set of older adults who deserve to have the support of a service coordinator more than another.
Of course. Yeah. And, it's not just anyone can be pulled off the street and be a service coordinator. It takes certain temperament, certain skills, knowledge, and all that. So I can definitely see how. So when you say companies, you mean like senior living places, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, affordable housing providers, public housing authorities just lack the funds to have a service coordinator on their own. They have very tight budgets already. And so to add in this extra expense is often prohibitive for them. So that's why it's really important to have HUD grants. And we haven't had any actually paid out in more than a decade. So there's a lot of need out there.
Right. And so most of the funding for service coordinators comes from the federal government or states?
Yes. Yeah. There are service coordinators who work in tax credit properties and in market rate properties, but the vast majority of service coordinators work in HUD Section 202 properties, specifically for older adults, or they work at public housing authorities, and they're funded through the Ross or FSS grants, which serve families who are moving to work and need assistance. And so all of those positions are funded by the federal government through the annual appropriations process.
Oh, okay. And so the meetings you guys had when you were in DC, just characterize them for me. Were the folks listening, representative listening to you guys? You said some of them didn't even know that there was such a thing as a service coordinator. So that must be like heartening to know that now you've educated somebody, hopefully who will become an advocate. Are there in Congress, are there folks who are sort of your champions inside, within, or the Senate?
Yeah, we do have some great champions in Congress. And often when we go to their offices and speak with their staff, everyone's really receptive. We have Congressman Adam Smith from Washington, who's been our largest supporter. He's the one who spearheaded the Expanding Service Coordinators Act over the past three Congresses. So it's being reintroduced for the third time this year. And the joint sponsors on that are Congresswoman Bonamici and Congresswoman Beatty. And so they've been really supportive. But truly, we have never come across somebody who doesn't support service coordination or who doesn't think it's a good idea once they learn about it. And that's why we always, when we talk about advocacy, we make people realize that your voice will be heard on this issue. I'm not going to lie and say that that's true about every issue, right? There's a lot of things out there right now that are polarizing, that if you have a view that's different from your member of Congress, you can call them, you can email them, you can talk to them. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Their mind is. But when it comes to service coordination, that's absolutely not the case. Like I said, most people don't know that service coordination exists. We've never had somebody opposed to it when we explain to them what it is. It really is a bipartisan issue. And that's why you'll see, when you look at the appropriations bills year over year that are proposed, oftentimes at least one chamber will have increased funding proposed for service coordination, regardless of who's spearheading that effort, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, because we do have so many people in Congress who, now that we've been promoting service coordination, understand the impact that it makes.
Yeah, yeah, and this is like you're saying, this is bipartisan. You're not seeing like Republicans saying, "Well, no, this violates my X, Y, and Z," right?
Right. I will say, it's hard to get support for increased funding or new funding
Yeah,
programs in the
right.
current fiscal climate with the current Congress.
Yeah,
Because a lot of Republicans have taken oaths to not
not
increase
only.
funding for
Yeah,
programming. And so they would love to support, and they do support existing funding. It's just
mm,
currently can be difficult to get them signed on for new funding and new programs.
sure.
But
I
we're
see.
hopeful that
Yeah,
we can make the case that in the long run, service coordination is actually going to save us a lot of money.
yeah. Maybe they can spend less on arms and more on service coordination,
I
weaponry.
mean, I'll take any extra money they want to give for
Right.
service.
Exactly. And so when you say, what kind of numbers are we talking about when it comes to the bottom line? Like how much money are we talking about that the government would, yeah.
Yeah, right now for the a multifamily service coordinator program, which are those serving specifically older adults and individuals with disabilities, we have $112 million a year as the current appropriations level. At $250 million a year is where we believe we would start to make headway. And over the course of a handful of years, we could see service coordinators put into the remaining properties that currently don't have them. So by basically doubling what's available, then we would be able to double the amount of service coordinators out there.
Wow. I mean, that's chump change, to be honest with you.
Yeah, in perspective, it is a
Oh, it
very
truly is.
significant
Yeah. I
bucket
mean,
of HUD
the
funding.
the yield you get out of the 250 would be huge, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we're talking a few thousand new service coordinators and huge just impacts for residents' health and well-being, and on a later bottom line for Medicare, Medicaid, even cost savings for properties because of reduction in turnover.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you this. What are your talking points? What's the pitch when you go to make the case, right, to a congressperson? Like when you went this last time and somebody never heard of you guys, what did you say?
Yeah, so we talk about in general the work of what service coordinators do. We usually give a couple of stories that are really impactful, showing kind of the work they make on a larger scale, but then also on an individual scale. That would obviously be tailored to what the office is interested in, topics they might be focused on, like veterans or social isolation or whatever that may be. And then we do usually talk about what the cost looks like and what the return on investment is. And what we know is that individuals with service coordinators live longer in their communities. 97% of residents with a service coordinator continued living in their communities instead of moving to facilities with higher levels of care last year. And that's really huge because not only do people not want to move to nursing homes, but they're often not available. Many of them have closed over the last few
Yep.
years. And then if they do end up in that nursing home or that assisted living and get one of those coveted spots, then who's going to be paying for that?
Mm.
Is not the resident, right? These residents on average have $12,000 to $13,000 a year incomes. They're dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. And so ultimately Medicaid is going to end up paying for their stay in that long-term care. And so we're going to be paying for their care either way, but it's going to be significantly cheaper to pay for a service coordinator, housing subsidies, SNAP, home health care, all of these things. It's actually cheaper on average by 66% per year than to pay for a nursing home for someone.
Yeah.
So we have all that stuff on our website. If anybody's ever curious to look at that, we have cost savings documents, and we always bring those one pagers to the offices. We have them for every state, for the national level. But that's a huge cost savings, 66% to say that's how much you can save by keeping someone in their housing and even paying for all those other things. Add that all up, and it's still 66% cheaper.
I mean, see, I mean, you don't see those kinds of numbers, often that if you invest, 66% saving is, does that register with these folks? Let's say the Republicans who are all just completely focused on cost reduction. When you say that, or not increasing, or whatever, right? Even though they say that, they usually act the other way. But in terms of just does it register with these folks that what you are advocating for is not just spending more, but spending smarter? And so you get sort of like, you get to get your cake and eat it too, right? You get better service and for less money in the long run. Does that register, or do they just say, oh yeah, well, whatever?
Yeah, I think it does. But like we talked about before, on a, public facing front, a lot of people in Congress who are Republicans have taken a pledge to not support any new funding. And so because of that, their hands are tied with supporting new programming and bills that have new funding in them. But, they do see the value in it. It's just a matter of kind of getting around those fiscal barriers.
Yes, the rhetoric,
the marketing and all of that.
Exactly,
right?
the rhetoric comes in the way, right? By just saying no. I mean, like the Doge thing is stupid because okay, you reduce X number of dollars now, but then the consequences, you're gonna have to pay for them later on. I mean, you can see this in like healthcare, right? The fact that people wait until it's late in the game and they go to the emergency room, that costs the system a lot more than say prevention, right? Where it costs pennies to the dollar if you were to do that, right?
Yeah, and we have actually had some studies show that healthcare costs more at the beginning of service coordinator intervention because people are getting that preventative care more likely. They're seeing a doctor now. They're taking care of their chronic conditions in ways that they weren't before. So at the beginning, you might see a spike in healthcare usage once you have a service coordinator on board with a resident. But over time, in the long term, that's going to be a lot lower when they're spending few years in long-term care or going to the emergency room less because they're managing their chronic conditions at home, right? So, but it is a really complex issue, and it's going to take years to realize savings. So I know that can make it complicated to get support for funding. But I do think now that we're looking to make cuts to Medicaid as a result of the most recent big, beautiful bill, I think Congress is going to have to take this more seriously, that we need to look for ways to reduce Medicaid costs for states and for the federal government, because we have to make cuts somewhere, but we don't want to sacrifice healthcare too much, hopefully.
Yeah. So one of the chronic problems that these facilities deal with is the turnover rate, right? Well, first of all, tell us the extent of that problem, like how prevalent it is and the numbers, and then perhaps you can tell me why do we have this problem?
Yeah, so the service coordinator industry has long dealt with a high turnover rate, and particularly in the years following COVID, there was a higher turnover rate in the service coordination industry than most all other tracked industries by the federal government. So they don't track service coordination, I do. But when I compared it to what the Bureau of Labor Statistics was tracking, I saw that the turnover was much higher. And
what are the like what? How much?
Oh man, that was maybe 4 years ago, so I can't recall. I think it was much as like 7 in 10 properties or owners had seen significant turnover in the past year at that time. And on average, the length of vacancy was about 6 months, which was really concerning because in that time, you've got residents whose benefits are lapsing, who are not getting access to the programs and benefits that they used to. And then once you get a new service coordinator on board, it takes time to ramp up and build those relationships with the new service coordinator, because service coordination is all about relationships and feeling like people can trust you, right? So it could really be a whole year before people are starting to get back into service coordination, which is really concerning because we just talked about how important it is and how much of a difference it makes.
Yeah.
And so we ask people too, why are your service coordinators leaving? What are the reasons they give for you? And the number one reason was pay. And the number two reason was stress, complete mental burnout. And that's why I think you saw such an increase after COVID, because, these service coordinators were really essential employees. They were on the ground every day. They never got to work remote. They were making sure that people lived through this pandemic every single day. And some of their residents didn't, right? And that took a toll on them as well. And all at the same time, they're trying to bring in new programs, new resources to help their residents who can't leave their property. And all the other systems are strained, especially in the aging industry. The aging network is having fewer resources, fewer funding, dealing with staff shortages as well. And so that makes making any connections more difficult. I just feel like it was coming at them from all angles, that their job was getting more difficult, more stressful, their residents were more stressed, and they really take that on personally, right? And so we started to see that people were moving away from the profession even more than usual. So the following year, we did a salary survey to follow up on that turnover survey to see how much are people actually making, what types of benefits do they have, how do they really feel about their work environment. Because the turnover survey was really just for owners and employers of service coordinators to tell us what was happening. We wanted to hear directly from service coordinators about what it was about their pay. What was it about their community structure or their employment structure that made it stressful? And so we got a lot of really great responses. We had the highest number of responses we've ever had for a survey. Almost 1,600 service coordinators respond to determine kind of working conditions. And that has been really helpful for advocacy, and it's already made a big difference.
Yeah. It's great. Your organization is great in the sense that they have a place where they can feel heard, right? How many folks, service coordinators, are part of your organization? I should have asked you that from the get-go.
Yeah, I guess I should have said that we have 4,000 service coordinators
1,000.
who are members of AASC, and they represent every state and territory.
Okay.
Which is very exciting. So, and our salary survey did include individuals from every state and almost every territory.
Okay. And what is the average or median, let's say, salary? Either metric could be.
Yeah, the average is $24 an hour for service coordinators, full-time service coordinators. I'm hopeful that has increased since our salary survey that was in 2023. And as a result of that survey, all types of HUD grant programs for service coordinators have implemented policy changes for how salary is set based on the findings of this survey. It's good for service coordinators to be paid well and compensated appropriately, because again, it is good for the residents. And it's also good for HUD, though. There were many times HUD had large carryover amounts year over year and couldn't get the funding they needed from Congress because there were so many layoffs over the years. There were gaps in service. And so that money goes straight back to HUD when it's not paying a service coordinator salary.
Wow. Okay.
So I think it's a win-win for everybody to try to promote strong salaries and good working conditions. And so now both public housing and multifamily housing service coordinators should use the Bureau of Labor Statistics data for social workers in their state and in their region to set their salary limits. And on average, those are about $33 per hour. So much higher. And this year, I just learned from HUD last week that as a result of that change, service coordinators in properties for older adults, there was about a little over 400 of them who asked for and received salary increases this year. some of them as much as 30% salary increases.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's huge. We're
Yeah.
very excited about that. That was new for this year. And I hope that in the future we get the funding we need from Congress so that everybody can take advantage of these salary benefits that they
Yeah.
need. Because yeah, when we have that turnover and when we can't find qualified employees, you mentioned this takes a special type of person to be a service coordinator,
Yeah.
and HUD encouraged them to have a bachelor's degree too. And so it's really important, if we want to find people who are going to make a difference, that we offer competitive wages.
And how about like health benefits? How do they get those?
Yeah, most service coordinators are offered healthcare benefits, but one of the most common comments we received to the survey in relation to benefits was that they couldn't afford them. Most of them couldn't either afford the premium, and some of them had upfront costs of as much as $10,000
Wow.
before their benefits kicked in or cost share kicked in. And so they may have access to healthcare. Almost every company provides it, but it's a matter of whether it's quality healthcare or affordable health insurance is what we're hearing is, that's not the case. And I'm sure that's the case across the board, though, for health insurance, right?
Sure.
Really high premiums, really high copays.
Yeah. 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 And how many service coordinators are there, if we know that number in the US beyond your organization?
In the US, I will say I know for sure there's about 6,000 HUD funded service coordinators. We have a good way to track that, but we actually don't know how many service coordinators are working in tax credits or market rate properties, because they don't report to anyone that they have a service coordinator. It's only those HUD funded service coordinators that are reporting annually, so we know where they're at.
Okay. So like an operator like Sunrise Living, right? They have service coordinators, and are those folks, some of them part of your association or not?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check in our membership association. We have, like I said, I think we have over or close to 1,000 different organizations represented through
Okay.
our membership. So that's a lot. And that can also give you a good idea of, we've got 4,000 members, 1,000 organizations represented.
Sure.
Some of these are really small organizations, and
Sure.
it's important that they have
Yeah.
our support and an investment from Congress to keep these programs going, because they're not these large companies, they're small businesses, these housing providers, and they need our support.
Yeah. And so how does one become a member? If I'm a service coordinator, how do I become a member? And what does it, do I pay anything or?
Yeah, so you can join through our website, or you can join and get an invoice through email. It's on servicecoordinator.org is the website that they can go to. And once you're a member, you have access to discounts on all types of training, including the National Service Coordinator Conference that you mentioned, which is going to be in Austin, Texas next year, which is super exciting. You also have access to things like Coordinator Core and all of our advocacy resources. So Coordinator Core is the meeting you talked about earlier. We meet every other month to talk about what's happening in service coordinator policy and funding and what you can do to be involved. And lots of other just member benefits that you can have for, it's $250 a year. And if you use Ask Online as your case management system, you get a $300 discount on that case management system if you become an Ask member. So it makes sense. It saves you $50 and you get the great benefits that being a member and being part of our network has.
$250 a year?
Yep.
Wow, that's a bargain. And then you train them for compliance with HUD stuff and all. I mean, you mentioned that, right?
Yeah, we do have amazing, it's called Service Coordinator Foundations in our AASC University, which is our on-demand training center. In there, I always recommend, if you've got new service coordinators, make sure they take the Service Coordinator Foundations. It's kind of everything you need to know. Because we've talked about a few times, it's a specialized job, but there's no college degree for this, right?
Yeah.
You kind of just take on the job because you've got the personality and the experience for it. But all of those HUD requirements and things are very specific to this program. So it's important to have that specialized training for service coordination, which we provide. And I always recommend everybody taking advantage of that as soon as they become a member. Yeah, lots of training opportunities.
Okay, wonderful. Um, so, well, I'm out of time. Geez, I had so many other questions I wanted to ask you.
I'll have to do a part two sometime.
Absolutely, definitely we'll do part two and part three. You have so many things, so many important things to share. And so, when is the next conference again? Next year, it's going to be in Austin.
Yeah, it'll be at the end of August in Austin at the JW Marriott. And we're very excited about it. We are in the state capital, so maybe we can do some advocacy there while we're at it. But it'll be great. We always have over 50 educational sessions, networking. As you said, it's just such a good time with good people.
Yeah. Well, Melissa Harris, thank you so much for making the time. I'm going to be greedy and ask you to have another conversation with me in a few months. But I do appreciate you making the time. I really do, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. And we at Whittlingo, we're gonna do all that we can to support you. Last question is how are you funded beyond the revenue that you get from your service coordinator subscriptions?
So we have our memberships and also our training. So we do offer free trainings at least once a month, but all of our other trainings are paid. And so that's our main focus is our education and our advocacy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.